Thanks for having us on the radio, and thanks to everybody who came out. We oppose CPS's decision to build the nuclear plant, and we support a lot of the other things they're doing, but we think fundamentally that the decision to build a nuke would violate Miss Piggy's golden rule, which is never try and eat something larger than you can lift. And it would likely risk the entire economy of San Antonio if CPS is wrong. We think that there are significantly cheaper alternatives like energy efficiency and renewables that would create jobs here locally as opposed to creating jobs in Japan and Bay City. We think there's a very large risk that CPS is using fuzzy math. Over a dozen studies by independent analysts like Standard & Poor's, Moody's, MIT, have indicated the cost of building this plant will be 1.5 to 2.1 times higher than CPS thinks it is. And as you recall, the last time they built a plant, it was 6 times higher than their first estimate. I think there's a big risk of bill increases, somewhere on the low end between $40 to $68 a month, depending on whether or not they can sell a larger share of their nuke at CPS's numbers at $13 billion. But if it's as much as $22 billion, like we think it might be, well, then that would be somewhere between $68 and $101 additionally per month per residential customer. We think there's a big risk of delay. CPS thinks they can build this plant in 48 months. The national average last time we went on a plant building spree was about 100 months, about 8 years. We think there's a big risk of running out of water, and at the drought we're seeing now is a real harbinger of it. You're in a lawsuit over access to Colorado River water. You'd been promised 90,000 acre-feet a year from LCRA. These two plants alone, the new plants and the old plants, are using 102,000 acre-feet a year, or they have that much of the Colorado Reserve. It may be a choice between whether you want to cool your thirst or cool your reactor. And the NRC back in the early 80s did an analysis of what would happen if there was a reactor problem at South Texas, and predicted 18,000 people would die early deaths as a result of that. We think that NRG is a risky partner. NRG has a poor credit rating. It was recently very close to bankruptcy. And what we find is that CPS and NRG aren't agreeing on fundamental things like how long it's going to take to build the reactor or what the cost is going to be. NRG saying 10, CPS saying $13 billion. And we think that there's a real risk that CPS's fuzzy math will come back and bite the citizens of San Antonio, and that the people who are doing independent analyses are going to be closer to right than CPS and the other utilities, and that as a result, we'll be in another situation like we were 20-odd years ago, where it'll be 6 times over budget and 8 years late. And the risk will be borne by the citizens of San Antonio, who are the captive ratepayers. The Congressional Budget Office and the Office of Management and Budget have said the reason we need loan guarantees is there's a 50% rate of failure on building these plants, and that's their estimate, not ours. If these plants are so safe and so likely to come in on time, why is it that we have to get loan guarantees? And why is it that we're in such a rush to be able to get a loan guarantee if CPS thinks that they're going to be able to deliver this plant on time, on budget, when history has shown that that's not happened in the past?
The advanced boiling water reactor that's under consideration, the ABWR, has a poor record in Japan. There's one under construction in China. It's late. That usually goes with cost overruns. The design is not improved. It only has one computer system. The NRC has asked, where is the backup system? CPS has been saying that nobody's ever died from a nuclear reaccident, but in fact, 3 people were killed in the Idaho Falls accident. So my question is, what is the value of a human life? I don't think we have these risks with solar and wind power or efficiency or geothermal or conservation. What is the value of a human life, and how does that figure into the cost estimates of CPS?
Well, maybe also if you could address, and I think that Smitty brought up that a few years ago that KEMA did a study that suggested that we could save about 1,200 megawatts. It has been put out there, and you just said that at some point you reach a level of diminishing returns, but that point has not been spelled out yet for the public, or what the additional expense would be. And that's a question that has been asked specifically now for, I think, several weeks, that hopefully CPS Energy will articulate an answer to. in the near future. And I will say as well that certainly as we make this decision at the council level, we're mindful of achieving the right balance and of being able to invest as opportunities arise in these renewable technologies.
We have many examples of solar around the country and around the world at a wide range of prices and costs. There's one plant that was built, Sempra Generation, a California-based utility, and they are now, they have built a 10-megawatt solar farm that is producing electricity at 7.5 cents per kilowatt hour, which is 0.5 cents a kilowatt hour less than the projected cost of nuclear power by City Public Service, or CPS Energy, I should say. So I think there's two things you have to look at. You have to look at today's costs, and you have to look at what do you expect to be the costs in 5 or 10 years. And if that cost curve is going down dramatically, then bet on that curve to keep going, because that's what's happening. Most of our energy decisions over the last years have been made on strict economic grounds. What's the cheapest thing we can do? And I think that the consideration of energy future needs to think about what are we leaving as a world for the people coming after us. It's not just an economic decision.